My executive coaching clients often ask me how they can maintain emotional mastery in high-stress situations. This is not easy because our brains are hardwired to freeze, fight, flee, or appease at the first hint of a threat. Back when we were living in caves, this was really helpful because then we were able to sort of immediately respond and escape from predators. But this brain default has really outlived its usefulness. It prevents us from accessing the newer, more highly evolved part of our brain, the neocortex. So how do we access this part of our brain so that we may craft more strategic and more creative responses to threats and stress? Well, step one, we have to know what our triggers and hot buttons are. We have to have a higher level of awareness about what actually triggers the threat response. This is tricky because every human being is triggered differently depending on the experiences that they've had, the memories that they've stored, their fears, and their values. However, an easy way to figure out what your triggers are is to figure out what you actually value. For example, if you really value honesty, you're going to be triggered by someone who lies to you. If you really value independence or autonomy, you're going to be triggered by people who try to micromanage you or control you. Once you know what your triggers and hot buttons are, step two is just acknowledging when you've been triggered and to simply label the feeling that comes up. For example, that person just lied to me and I'm feeling angry. Or that person's trying to micromanage me and I'm feeling annoyed. Once I have acknowledged the trigger and I've identified the feeling, I execute the magical third step. I just smile. I take a deep breath and I ask myself, what is Laura Scott going to do now? Why the smile? The smile is important because that's the signal to the brain that all is well. After the smile comes the question, what is Laura Scott going to do now? That question allows us to override the primitive brain's automatic threat response because the primitive part of the brain doesn't know how to answer that question. So it has to hand the question over to the creative thinking part of the brain, the part of the brain that actually exercises control of behavior. So the next time you're triggered, practice this. It really, really works.